Good evening, local scientists. My name is Toria Baker, and I am a student at Brigham Young University in Provo, Utah. And for the past 6 months, I've had the opportunity to undergo research on reef sedimentation off the coast of Molokai, Hawaii, with my colleague, Dr. Gell. As I have undergone this research, I've learned a lot about ecosystem services. Now, there are 3 different types of ecosystem services. There are provisioning, regulating, and cultural. There is a coral reef that resides on the southern part of the island of Molokai, and it's a fringing reef. It covers basically the entire southern part of the island, and this fringing reef is able to undergo those 3 different types of ecosystem services. It provides food for the Hawaiians. It also provides food for the food cycle that's maintained in the ocean because of this coral reef. Not only that, but it is natural vegetation that adds in decreasing the wave impact on the coastline of Molokai, Hawaii whenever there are storms. And these coastlines are incredibly important. And these ecosystem services that this coral reef gives to not only the humans that reside on it, but the other vegetation and animals that live on this island. These services can be diminished or they can be accentuated by human choices. And it's up to us if we want to help this fringing reef survive. Another thing that is unique about Molokai, Hawaii, other than its fringing reef, are the fish ponds that reside along it. Now, these fish ponds are an important zone between the land and the ocean along the coast. These fish ponds were built by ancient Hawaiians to help them with their aquaculture, to hunt fish. But not only that, nowadays they're used to collect the erosion and to collect the sediment that is coming off of the land into the ocean. This erosion comes from us. It comes from land use changing, it comes from farming, and it gets into this water and moves into the ocean and can actually impact these coral reefs in a very negative way. It can cause the suffocation of coral. It can prevent them from undergoing photosynthesis, and it ends up killing off these coral reefs. And as you can see, here's Kristen and I. She's one of my fellow researchers that helped me with my project. We're standing in the middle of a fish pond off the southern coast of Molokai, Hawaii. And these fish ponds are built out of lava rocks taken from the island, and then they have a gate built by these ancient Hawaiians where it allows small fish to come in but doesn't allow the fish to get back out once they've grown to a certain size. And so these fish, they love brackish water, so they'll flow in and swim into this fish pond, and they'll grow and they'll eat, and they'll get so large that they won't be able to swim back out. And this is how the ancient Hawaiians were able to hunt their fish so well. I had 2 hypotheses for my sedimentation project. The first one was that the sedimentation will be greater inside these fish ponds, and that majority of the sedimentation is going to be from terrestrial sources. It's going to come from land, and it's not actually going to be coming from the coral reef. My second hypothesis was that the depth of the sedimentation is going to be deeper within the fish ponds than outside of them. So, materials and methods. How do we go about collecting our data? As you can see here from these pictures, this is a picture of me hiking through the mud of the fish pond. It had just such rich sedimentation in this fish pond right here. And I took samples in a grid-like fashion. So every 100 meters, I would collect a sample and put a code on it so that I knew exactly where the sediment sample was taken. And then I also had my depth stick and a sediment collection probe so that I was able to collect sediment as I went about gathering my research. So step 1, I had to measure the depth of the sediment, and I did this inside and outside of the fish ponds. I also retrieved the top 10 centimeters of sediment from the ocean floor. And step 3 was taking the latitude and longitude coordinates. Next step was to bring the sediment collections back into the lab and analyze this data. And we did this through particle size analysis. Luckily, previous researchers had already researched land-derived and reef-derived sediment collections, and they had noticed that anything that's land-derived is going to be smaller than 250 micrometers. Anything larger than that is going to be reef-derived. Using that information, we were able to categorize the sediment samples into 4 different types: coarse, medium, medium fine, and fine. Anything coarse is going to be anything larger than 2 millimeters. Medium is the sediment collected that is ranging between 2 millimeters and 250 micrometers. Medium fine is anywhere between 250 micrometers to 53 micrometers, and fine sediment is going to be anything smaller than that 53 micrometers. As you can see in this first fish pond, Pahiomu fish pond, inside it was heavily land derived. As you can see, there's a lot of fine and medium fine sediment inside the fish pond. And outside, if you look at this pie chart, you'll see that it's more heavily medium-sized sediment, which is going to be from the reef. Kamahuihui fish pond showed the exact same thing. It had more fine and medium fine sediment inside of the fish pond, while there was more coarse and more medium-sized sediment on the outside of the fish pond. Kavanui fish pond, on the other hand, had some slightly different results, and we believe that the reasons for these errors is because in Kavanui there is a shrimp farm that has brought a lot of jellyfish in to the fish pond to feed on the shrimp. And because of this, we weren't able to take very accurate sampling because of, we were being bit by jellyfish. And so our samples were not taken in a very grid-like fashion. Not only that, but outside of the Kavanui, there is a huge blue spot, which is basically just deep water, so we weren't able to take our reef sediment collection outside of the fish pond, therefore creating some crazy data that we're actually not going to use for our analysis. Through the depths that we measured, we noticed slightly different changes between inside and outside, and it was that the inside generally were deeper than the outside depths. From our data that we collected, we were also able to calculate the amount of sediment in the fish ponds that is terrestrially derived. And we did this through taking the area, multiplying it by the density, multiplying that by the percent of the sediment that was terrestrially derived that we calculated in our analysis, and then multiplied that by the average depth in the fish ponds. And we came up with these numbers for Kavanui, Kamahuihui, and Pahiomu, with Kavanui having almost 90,000 metric tons of terrestrially derived sediment in the fish pond, which just goes to show you that these fish ponds are doing good. They are helping take in the terrestrially derived sediment and keeping it off of the coral reef. Now, these are some of the possible solutions that we've come up with for reducing the sediment runoff. And we want your help with further research in this so that we can help the Molokai Hawaiians on what they can do to reduce the sediment that is coming from off of their land into their ocean. Now, the first idea was that improving agricultural methods so that it reduces erosion and runoff. And part of this is we want to maintain the vegetation along the rivers and streams, the natural vegetation. The agricultural methods that are being used right now have actually taken away the vegetation along the rivers and streams, causing more erosion and more sediment to get into the water column and running off into the ocean. Our second idea was land use zoning plans and regulations. We want to restrict building and construction certain distances away from the shoreline, because this construction, the building, actually creates more sediment moving into the water column, flowing from land into the ocean. And so we want you guys to help us undergo more research with these solutions. And with all of this, I think what we've learned is that the Molokai way is the best way. The traditional Hawaiian approach, where agriculture should be on the top at higher elevations, and aquaculture should be where they get their food, and it should be our main focus is keeping their aquaculture alive. Thank you so much for your time. If you guys have any questions, please let me know.